Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea from Game Informer, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. We have a little bit of news to touch on this week, and then we are going to transition to talking about Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp and the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster series, both of which are out right now. Joining me for that is Game Informer's Wesley LeBlanc. Wes, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really, really good because of a little collection of games that you've already mentioned. It's a good time to be a Final Fantasy fan.
I have been waiting for this moment for a long time for these Pixel remasters to come to consoles, and wouldn't you know it, one of the first platforms that it comes to outside of PC is the Switch. So we're going to talk about that during the main segment. Wes, you know how we usually do things here. Typically, the first thing that we talk about, if you're a returning guest, which you are, we skip over first favorite Nintendo game, and we go right into some Pokemon news. But yeah. I don't know if you've noticed this, but things have actually been pretty uncharacteristically quiet on that front lately. So we're actually going to start with another franchise that I know and love very, very much, and that is the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise.
Yeah.
So the Sonic Cinematic Universe, it's officially expanding now. We already knew that this was coming, but production has finally started on the live-action Knuckles series that is going to be streaming on Paramount+. And the series spins off of the second Sonic movie, and it features a pretty good cast from what I can tell. So it features Idris Elba returning as Knuckles, so you already have the star power right off the bat.
Yeah.
And Jeff Fowler, who directed Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, is returning to kind of be the showrunner of this series, so you can probably expect a consistent tone there, which is always a good thing. And then, according to Variety, Adam Pally and Tika Sumpter, who were in Sonic 1 and 2, they reprised their roles as Wade and Maddie from the movie. And then they have new cast members to the Sonic universe, including Edie Patterson from The Righteous Gemstones, Julian Barat from Mindhorn, Scott Mescudi, a.k.a. Kid Cudi, and then
Nice.
Ellie, exactly. And then Ellie Taylor from Ted Lasso, and then Rory McCann from Game of Thrones are joining the cast. So they're adding some seasoned actors who you probably will recognize from various projects.
Yeah.
And then the plot apparently takes place after the events of Sonic 2, with Knuckles training Wade, who was the one of the police officers in the town, to be an Echidna warrior. I don't know how I feel about that, but we'll see how that goes.
I didn't know that. Yeah, that doesn't. I'm glad that it's taking place after 2, because like a prequel to 2 would have been kind of, because you kind of know where it ends up. But I like that it's taking place after. But training an officer to become an Echidna warrior does not sound. That sounds like I don't know, like kind of Saturday morning cartoonish versus.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, this is like a kids movie franchise, but I don't know.
I don't know. I've always thought, like, I like the Sonic movies more than a lot of people do, I think. And I think that they're pretty well liked across gaming. I know Kyle Hilliard does not like them. Kyle Hilliard outwardly says they are bad movies.
Oh, really? I enjoyed them. Yeah.
But I will say that anything involving the humans is just not anything I care about. So hopefully this does not fall into that camp at all. Like Sonic 2 was at its best when it was like, okay, yeah, let's send the humans off to a wedding in Hawaii and not worry about them for large swaths of the story. Like the only human I really care about is Dr. Robotnik.
Yeah, which he might be done with the franchise. Or
Jim Carrey might be done with acting.
Yeah,
it sounded like he might retire after Sonic 2, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's the Sonic movie / TV show news out of this. But Sonic's also getting some new Legos. Did you see this?
I did. Yeah, I wrote our story about it.
So we already have one set, which is I'm not a Lego guy, but I saw it sitting on the store shelf at Target, and I picked it up and I was looking at the back, and I'm like, I remember writing like the report this was coming out, like when they first greenlit it. Because it was one of those like community creations, and then like I guess like it got so popular that Lego eventually like greenlit it and got the official license and everything. And you can buy the single set. I think it's like a Green Hill Zone themed set, and it's pretty awesome. But I'm not a Lego guy. But this one I was very tempted. Every once in a while I'll duck into the Lego store, and I will be super tempted by like one or two of them. And then I like think like, do I really need like more things around my house, especially things that will break if like it falls.
Yeah, and like, they're not cheap anymore. I remember
they're so expensive.
Growing up, Lego was like a standard toy that like my parents would get me. And then now I look at Lego and I'm like, I don't have kids. If I ever have kids though, I'm not buying them like $100 set to play with as toys until they're like old enough to build it and understand. Like, they're too expensive. What happened to
Well,
Lego?
what happened was all the people who grew up with Legos now have adult money,
Yeah, true. And they were
and
like,
the collectors got a hold of it, and then
yeah,
that's when I mean, look at retro video games.
yeah,
Like, you
that's
used to be able to
true.
go buy like a Super Nintendo cartridge for like $5 at a local game store, and now it's like, oh, well, I want to play this obscure game from my childhood. All right, that'll be $150.
Oof. Yeah.
It's the way it always works. I mean, Pokemon games and Zelda games especially are like the most egregious offenders there. Like, if you
Yeah.
try to get like a sealed copy of Pokemon Heart Gold or Soul Silver, like, good luck.
I was in Japan recently and I was looking at retro games and they had Pokemon Emerald sealed and I really wanted it because Emerald's probably my favorite, but it was like $156 and I was like, oh gosh, I can't. And even like a sealed crystal was like 130 and I want them. I love them. It'd be cool to have them, but at the end of the day, like I'm spending $130 for something that's going to sit on a shelf by my desk and it's tough.
That's kind of been like, I've only gone to Japan twice, but that has been my tradition. Is I get a game in a box.
Yeah.
The last trip I got way too many games in boxes. I think I came home with like 6 games, whereas last time I just came home with Ocarina of Time. That was all I got when I was out there. So Ocarina of Time's Japanese version. This time I came back with 2 Mario games, 2 Final Fantasy games, a Street Fighter game, and God, something else. I don't know. I can't even see it. No, I don't know what I got, but
I came
they're
back
all
with
in my
the
display
Final
case.
Fantasy game too, but it was Final Fantasy 13 sealed and it was $5.
But yeah, so I mean, when I go back out there, I really want to get a sealed copy of like red or blue, or I guess it would be green, because
Green,
that's what they
yeah.
have out there. Yeah. But yeah, so getting back to this Lego story, we already have that one set. I don't need any more Sonic stuff or any more Lego stuff, but we're getting 4 more Lego sets announced for the Sonic franchise. So the first one is Sonic's Speed Sphere, and this is like a little like ball that you can load the Sonic minifig into, and then there's like a spring that you actually are meant to pound your fist into, and
Hmm.
it sends the sphere flying. Like, it sends him like really fast, and part like you can get the Sonic's Green Hill Zone loop challenge, which is another set, and you can build like a loop, and then it has a ramp at the end of it, and then it jumps through a ring, like the large rings like in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and it looks like you can actually like try to set it up in a way that Sonic will, it looks like he's spin dashing through this course, which is really a cool concept.
That is, yeah. I think with all 4 sets, you can like connect them.
Oh, okay. So yeah, the other 2 are Amy's Animal Rescue and Tails Workshop and Tornado Island. So those are the 4. They're all going to be available starting August 1st. And there's also a Sonic waffle maker. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, what? I did not see that. That's
And
the more important news here.
it's apparently going to be available as a prize at Dave and Buster's.
Oh, it's perfect.
Like, I don't know. Like, I make waffles quite often, and I already have a standard waffle maker, and then also a Pokeball waffle maker, which I've never
I
used
also have
before.
that one and have
Yeah,
never used it. Yeah.
it's still in the box. But if
I
I
actually
didn't
don't
already
know if
have those,
I don't think I've ever made waffles at home.
what?
Yeah, I'm a pancake guy to begin
Yeah,
with.
but I like pancakes great as well. But like, come on, man, waffles are where it's at. Like, it's a different consistency.
I will
Same
say, like
same
4
flavor.
minutes from my house, I have a Waffle House. So
Okay,
if I need
but
a waffle fix, especially when it's like 1 a.m., I go to the Waffle
why go to
House.
the Waffle House when you can make your place a waffle home?
Oh.
Okay, let's move on. Sega news keeps coming here. The company has announced that it is acquiring the developer behind Angry Birds, Rovio. So, according to Sega, the acquisition was a quote friendly takeover
Yeah.
because it had the approval of Rovio's board of directors, and then Rovio's CEO, I'm assuming this is Alexandre Pelletier Normand, said, and then you can react to this quote after I finish reading it. Quote, Red and Sonic the Hedgehog, 2 globally recognized and iconic characters made by 2 remarkably complementary companies with a worldwide reach that spans mobile, PC/console, and beyond. Combining the strengths of Rovio and Sega presents an incredibly exciting future. So, first of all, I don't disagree that these companies do actually complement each other. Like, they have similar tones in a lot of their games, and like, I would even say there's a lot of similarities between like the Angry Birds franchise and like the Monkey Ball franchise.
Hmm.
But this is the first time that I'm learning that Red is the name of the bird.
Oh, I did not know that. Yeah. I mean, I guess there's two movies, so maybe if I watched those movies, I would know that.
Like everybody knows what he looks like. I was an obsessive Angry Birds player back when it first came out,
Hmm.
and like everybody knows what he looks like. He's a very iconic looking character, but I don't think he's on the same level as Sonic in terms of like pop culture icon.
Oh, not at all. No, yeah.
But do you think like Sega does anything interesting with the Angry Birds IP?
Um, I don't think they're going to do anything surprising. I could see maybe more movies happening since Sega's like continuing to dip into movies via Sonic, and there's already been two Angry Birds movies that I think were at least like successful. I don't know if they were well liked, but money. And then I don't know, Sega's got like a interesting staple of games on mobile platforms, and Angry Birds is not a bad mobile IP to have.
Mm-mm.
So I
It
mean,
was at
I
one
don't.
point it was the largest.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is going to be like anything, earth shattering, but I wouldn't be surprised if they just kind of continue the course for Angry Birds and make more money off of it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is Rovio obviously knows how to make good games, and so it's another good acquisition. Sega's acquired a few studios, most notably, I would say Atlas. That was another big acquisition they had. I guess that was what 6 years ago at this point, 5 or 6 years ago that they acquired Atlas. That
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was a pretty big get for them. I mean, this is not on that same level, but it's a pretty good one, and I'm excited to see what they can do with this IP now that they have the resources of Sega, because that seems like they're pumping a lot of money into like investing in these IPs that they own. Like we're seeing the Yakuza series finally like getting the attention it deserves, and
Yeah.
I mean, Persona is just blowing up. I feel like every single day I get Persona 5 has a new collaboration with the mobile game. So like there's got to be some synergy there that they have. So we'll see what they end up doing with that. But we have one more piece of Sega news. It's just
Oh.
Sega had a busy week. This time the news is a little bit more related to Nintendo specifically. We have 4 Genesis games that have been added to the Nintendo Switch Online catalog. There's Street Fighter 2 Special Championship Edition, which finally a way to play Street Fighter 2 on Switch. We have Kid Chameleon. We have Pulse Man. Which do you know what Pulse Man is?
Yeah, I've never played it, but I've wanted to. That's the Game Freak like side scroller or
Yeah,
platformer maybe? Yeah.
so it's a platformer from the studio that ended up making Pokemon. I mean, they released it 2 years later, four
Oh,
years.
really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to Pokemon. Yeah, it was 1996 in Japan, right? God, why am I
Pokemon?
blanking? Yeah, Pokemon's 96 in Japan, I
Um
think.
yes, that
Yes, it
sounds
was
right. Yeah.
98 in the US. That's what I was. That was my confusion. It was at 96 in Japan and then 98 in the US. But so yeah, 2 years before they hit it big with Pokemon, they released this game Pulse Man on the Sega Genesis. And the funny note that I pulled here is that it takes place in the distant future of 2015. And then the final one is Flicky, which is an arcade game that stars the blue bird that is now a Sonic the Hedgehog mainstay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember writing Flicky when I was doing the Lego set story, and I was like, I have no idea who Flicky is, and Flocky, and some other characters I've never heard of.
Yeah.
I haven't played all the Sonic games, so I only know the mainstays.
So yeah, Flicky is just a little blue bird that has appeared in several Sonic games.
Cool.
Usually Sonic is trying to free him. So yeah, those are now available if you have a Switch Plus Online or a Switch Online Plus expansion pack subscription. Do any of those make it seem like you really need to play it?
I mean, I want to check out Pulse Man, but I don't know if I actually do that. And I've already got the Street Fighter 2, whatever the Switch one is with the weird first person mode.
Oh,
So
Ultra.
yes, yeah.
I
So
mean, there's like so many. 'Cause there's also the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection. I think Street Fighter 2 is on the SNES catalog as well. But I guess like
hmm.
if you grew up playing the Genesis version specifically, then this is a cool like nostalgia thing. Like I grew up playing the SNES version specifically. So I like playing Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which that's actually the one that I ended up buying in Japan was Street Fighter 2
Oh,
Turbo.
nice.
And it happened to be that I was there for Street Fighter 6. So it had to make sense thematically as well.
Yeah, yeah. I've
Uh,
kind of thought about jumping into 2 lately, especially when I saw this news. Just because, like, I really want to get into 6, and I've never really played a Street Fighter 2 too much. But I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna wait for 6. It's like what 2 months away, a month
yeah,
away,
a
basically.
month and a half.
I'm gonna make it my. I really want to try to like play that game, not just like go through the story, but like get good at it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really good books out there. There's one, God, I forget what the outlet was, but they put out like a little like ebook from Masher to Master, it was called.
Oh,
And I actually read that back when Street Fighter V was coming out, and it's only like it's a very short read. So it just kind of gives you like some strategies from high level players, just kind of some ways that you can better yourself and like ways you can practice to get better. And I definitely noticed a jump in my game. I'm still not an amazing player by any stretch, but I was definitely more on the masher side before that. Now I feel like I have a lot more strategery and a lot more control over my characters, but I still do fall into a lot of those like kind of noob tendencies. But like I don't know, I feel like I held my own when I visited Capcom late last year and was playing with the director and the producer, and of course they were going easy on me because I know especially the director is like super good at Street
yeah,
Fighter.
that would be terrifying. I don't like. I'd be so stressed having to play against the director, I guess, in a game like that. But it's also like a really cool thing to say you did.
Yeah, and we even went to the arcade, which you can go find that video
Yeah,
on our YouTube channel. And I was playing Street Fighter 2 against the producer of Street Fighter 6, which was super fun, just sitting in an arcade playing against him in Osaka. So go
I
check out that video on YouTube.
when I was in Japan recently, I was just going through like an 8 floor arcade just to kind of take it all in. And I was didn't really play any games except Street Fighter 2. I was like, I feel like I have to play this one, it seems. And it's so cool to see like how poppin' it was. Like the entire row of like 10 Street Fighter 2 boxes was full of people playing and playing against each other. And I was like watching like it was a tournament. So
It's
cool.
such an amazing experience. And yes, every single time I go to one of those, I have to sit down and play Street Fighter 2. It's just it was the phenomenon that I remember taking part in over here in the States, and it was
Yeah,
cool to kind of like sit down on one of those machines that I don't know if it's one of the ones that existed way back then or if they're kind of like restored machines or whatever, but like it feels like you're playing a part of history when you sit down in those arcades and play Street Fighter 2.
I agree.
But let's transition to the kind of the bigger Nintendo news out of this week, and that is that Nintendo streamed an Indie World presentation, which gave us some news about several upcoming indie titles and a couple of surprise releases. Wes, I know you've seen this a couple of times now.
Yeah.
What were the standout games for you?
For me, I think Maneko's Night Market, just because I forgot that game was announced or like revealed like five or
It's
four
been a
years ago,
minute.
and now we have a release date. It's coming very soon in September. That was one of the standouts for me. Going through the list here, Crime O'Clock was one that
Oh, really?
looks cool. I like the Where's Waldo style map, and like you're solving mysteries and crime cases through time and watching how it affects different timelines. Obviously, who knows how it'll pan out, but that's an interesting pitch to me. And then Oxenfree 2, of course. That's I'm excited for that. Played it back in 2016, and now finally, God, 7 years later, we're gonna play the sequel this July. And then Blasphemous 2, I think. I haven't played the first Blasphemous. I own it and I want to play it. I just
I own it
respect
as
that
well.
game so much. It looks so cool, and it's a unique setting, and it's interesting to see like a studio play around with like Catholicism. Which, because when I was a kid, like I would go to my grandparents' house in the summer, and they lived across the country, and my grandma would take me to Catholic church with her, and I used to think it was like so like not like scary, but like kind of spooky and haunt, like just the way they like the organs and the way they sing songs and all that stuff. And this game kind of feels like a take on Catholicism in that way, where it's just like the spookier elements of the Bible brought to life.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like some really cool themes in that. I also bought Blasphemous way back in the day. I think this was not way back in the day. Like I think it was like last year, like early 2022 maybe I bought it. Like
Yeah.
I had a guest on, Kylie Parker, who she does a lot of like toy photography and everything, and she does some contract work with Nintendo. And this was her eShop gem of the week, I believe, if I'm not confusing her pick with somebody else's. And the way she described it, like I was like, oh yeah, I am all in on this. And then I just never really had a chance to fire it up because I just am so busy with playing all these different games trying to keep up. And then they announced Blasphemous 2. I'm like, well, crap. I guess I should probably play Blasphemous 1 because this
Yeah.
comes out this summer. Like Blasphemous 2 is at at longest like 4 months away.
Yeah. It's sometime this summer, and I mean, the first game is tough. Apparently, I have a
That's what I've heard.
friend who loves it, but he's still like hasn't beaten it, and he's usually pretty good at these types of games. So, like, yeah, if you want to beat the first one before the second one, it might be good to start sooner than later.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, there's some pretty big games coming out between now and then.
Are there? I
Yeah,
don't
just a
know.
few. But the other ones that kind of stuck out to me, you've mentioned a lot of them, but Cult of the Lamb, Relics of the Old Faith DLC, it adds like new followers, it adds new like abilities and weapons and everything. That comes out next week, April 24th.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good reason for me to get back to that game because I loved what I played of it. I just kind of fell off of it.
Oh yeah,
Um,
you should beat it. It's fun.
yeah, I think I beat the first two bosses, so I get reasonably deep
Yeah.
into it. Um, Animal Well, which I played at Summer Game Fest last year, and I really liked that. That was before it was signed by Donkey's
Yeah.
publishing company that he
Really
founded recently.
strange and jarring to see Video Game Donkey, the popular YouTuber, just appear on a Nintendo Indie World Showcase screen. And even funnier was that the way that Donkey and the game's developer shot it, they were just like, it looked like they just used like a phone camera to shoot them talking about the game in front of a lake.
Yeah,
It
and
was very, I guess, very Video Game Donkey style.
it was very much let's go for a hike and maybe we'll shoot a video while we're out there.
Yeah.
That game was super fun when I played it out in LA last summer. That comes out this winter. You mentioned Oxenfree 2. That I've never played Oxenfree 1, and this trailer made me think maybe I should because it looked really cool.
It's really cool. It's just a lot of like narrative. Really, the gameplay is not anything too spectacular, but it tells a really good story, and it's short. I think it's like 5 to 7 hours, maybe. If you like spooky paranormal stuff, I'd give it a go.
I think former Game Informer editor JV Gwaltney was a big fan of Oxenfree, and I know there's some people on staff who are huge fans of Oxenfree as well. So, but this is one that I think is circled on a lot of Game Informer editors' calendars.
Yeah,
It's July 12th. And then the two that we haven't mentioned yet that really caught my eye, Rift of the Necrodancer, which is coming out this
mm.
year at some point. That just, a rhythm game that I guess it's a full-on sequel to Crypt of the Necrodancer. And, we had a spin-off from that. The one that I would say that people should play, especially if you're listening to this podcast and you're a big fan of Zelda, is Cadence of Hyrule, which is a Crypt of the Necrodancer spin-off. And basically you go out there and you move through Hyrule to the beat of Zelda music that has been reimagined, and you have to take on like classic Zelda enemies and everything, and it's really fun.
I've
So
wanted
if
to play that for so long, and
now's
every
the
time I go into like a GameStop or a store selling games and I see the physical version, I'm like, maybe today, but I haven't yet.
I mean, just get it on the eShop. I'm sure it's on sale. I bet it's on sale right now.
It's weird with Switch games. If I'm buying it, I usually like to get physical. I don't know why. I think I just really like the Switch cases so much because I don't really
That
care about PS5 or Xbox too much. But
that is the
something about the
exact
Switch
opposite
cases.
as me because here's the thing. I want to go to like when I travel, the Switch is what I bring, right? It's my Switch and my phone and my iPad. Those are the three
Yeah,
devices that I bring. I don't want to carry a stack of games or like a bunch of carts in a thing. I don't want to be like dropping my carts on my plane. And
that's fair. Yeah,
so like that's the thing for me is I always am making sure that I have my Switch games digital. And I mean the rest of my consoles at this point are digital as well, but the portable consoles were always the ones that I went digital first. And
Hmm.
then eventually I was like, all right, fine. I'm sick of having like boxes and boxes full of game boxes. And I mean, like literally I was looking in my storage and I still have like 3 tubs full of games. And I was just like, should I just donate these or something? Because
Yeah.
they've been in storage for a couple of years now because I've just gone full digital.
Switch games. I feel like physicals retain a lot of value compared to like other consoles.
That's
Fortunately,
fair. But Rift of the Necrodancer is out this year. And then the last one, they kind of just sizzle reeled it, which I was surprised because I think a lot of people are
yeah.
excited for this. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. That comes out August 18th. And that was a release date announcement that they kind of just like, hey, here's some other games that we want to show you. And
Yeah,
that was the last one.
I try not to read too much into things like that, but it is weird. Like that's a big game that a lot of people are excited for, and for it to just get a little sizzle reel and a release date, like that could have been its own. If you would have like sent a press release, that would have been a news story for the day. Like Bomb Rush Cyberfunk release date announced. People are really stoked about that. And so for it to just get like a, 5-second flash in a trailer, it's very weird to me.
It is, yeah. And so for people who don't know, that is kind of like a spiritual successor to Jet Set Radio or Jet
Hmm.
Grind Radio, depending on how you know it. And they even have the original composer coming back to make music for this one. So that's one that a lot of people are really excited about. But yeah, those are the ones that stood out to me. Minico's Night Market was another one that you mentioned that I thought looks really cool. And also, of course, there's a game called Little Kitty Big City,
Yeah.
which I'm excited for that. That seems just like open world, worry free Stray.
Right. Yeah. And a standard, I think it's like New York or something, not some dystopian cyberpunk world.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's not to like? But
Yeah.
that's the Indie World presentation. We have some news about the Super Mario Brothers movie, which we've covered extensively over the past couple of episodes. So, Wes, just want to get your quick thoughts. You've seen the movie now, right?
Yes, I've seen it twice actually. I saw it with
Okay.
friends, and then I saw it with my nephew. He was like very cute and FaceTime me, and he was like, "Can you please take me to see the movie?"
That's right. Yeah, you
Because
did
he's
tell us that.
8. And then I had some friends who wanted to go, and I was like, "Yeah, it's like 80 minutes of my life. I'll go see it again." I had a good time.
So, overall thoughts. We don't need to dwell too much on this because I'm sure the listeners are tired of hearing about the Mario movie at this point. But go
Yeah.
ahead.
I really liked it. It's doing exactly what it clearly wants to do, which is, speak to fans of the franchise who are going to find all the little references, and then also be a totally serviceable movie for people, like my nephew who's 8 and he just wants to see Mario do some cool stuff. I mean, he was like, it was fun watching it through his eyes because he was like excited whenever they were on the carts, and he was like pointing out that that's like Mario Kart 8, and he was asking where the hat from Odyssey is because that's what he's currently playing. And I was like, oh, maybe it'll show up in a different movie. And yeah, like I think seeing this movie with like kids around you is like very cool because you can see their reactions. This is going to be a big deal, and I imagine one of the stories we're about to talk about is just how big of a deal this movie is going to be.
Yeah, so basically the story here is that it hit another major milestone early this week, so it's probably even higher at this point, but Variety reported earlier this week that it had crossed $500 million at the global box office, and as of this recording, heading into its third weekend in theaters, it is sitting at more than $700 million worldwide. So it's in the time since that Variety report, it's picked up another 200 mil,
Yeah, that
which
is. I mean, yeah, the records just keep stacking up. It's like Illumination's biggest hit by far, I
yeah,
think.
it's Illumination's biggest hit. It is the highest grossing video game movie ever, and it is the highest grossing film of 2023 so far. So does any of that surprise you?
Not at all. No.
Yeah.
I mean, the second this movie got announced, I was like, yeah, this is $1 billion movie. It doesn't even need to be good. It's awesome that it is good. But you put Mario on a screen, it's going to make a lot of money, and I am excited because I imagine the executives at Illumination and Nintendo are just plotting out an entire universe of Nintendo movies.
I mean, Seth Rogen told me on this very show that he wants to do a Donkey Kong solo show or solo movie, so I would not be surprised if we got that. And
That
then
would be awesome.
I
But
think
they need
Luigi's
to,
Mansion is the shoe in, right?
yeah, Luigi's Mansion has to happen. If they do Donkey Kong, my biggest critique of the movie is Cranky Kong. He did not work for me. I think that's Fred Armisen,
Yeah.
and I don't know what that voice he was going for is, but it just does not fit Cranky Kong, and I kind of just hated every time he was on
A
screen,
lot of people
unfortunately.
are throwing out that criticism as well, and yeah, he didn't work for me super well either, but not to the point that I was like, all right, get this guy off my screen, and he was done soon enough, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's such an odd. I mean, I guess there's not like too much lore behind Cranky Kong, but like he's an old dude, like an
Well,
old
he's the
monkey
original Donkey
grandpa.
Kong.
Yeah, and this one he seemed. I don't know. I guess I was looking for someone more like grandpa, like.
Well, I mean, in the first Donkey Kong Country, like which was like his first real appearance, he
Yeah,
as Cranky Kong anyway, he was just yelling about how newfangled games aren't like they used to be and stuff
yeah.
like that. So I don't know how well that would really translate to the big screen, but yeah, I mean, I'm with you largely in your thoughts on the movie, and I think that this franchise is just going to keep blowing up, and I bet this movie's going to cross $1 billion before too long, especially since it's not even out in certain markets. Like I don't think it's out in Japan yet, right?
No, it's not. And yeah, I was just reading a story about how they're gonna Spike will be called Spike in Japan. Like they're changing that character's name to be Spike everywhere when it
Huh.
comes out in Japan. I didn't know, but the original name for Spike in the Japanese version of Mario is like not a great name. It's
Oh
kind,
no.
it's kind of offensive. It is his name in that was Blackie, and they are changing it from Blackie to Spike to match the rest of the movie's releases elsewhere.
Yeah, that's probably a good call.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I don't think it's out in Japan yet because I was reading that story today about how when it comes out in Japan, the new name will be Spike.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good call. And yeah, once it hits Japan, I feel like that's gonna easily push it over the billion mark if it's not already there by then.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah,
Still so absurd to me that we don't have a new Mario game or anything tying into that.
I think that it's probably gonna happen this summer. Like if I had to guess, I think they're gonna get Tears of the Kingdom out. They're going to do the full marketing thing, give it a little bit of a blast radius, and then I think this summer they're going to announce some big things. If it's not like, all right, a Mario game's coming later this year, then it's going to be like a Mario game is in the works. I think they're kind of trying to let us focus on one big
Yeah.
flagship franchise at a time here. And I would not be surprised if like the traditional E3 time frame is not when we get some big stuff either for this year or next year.
Yeah, that's fair. It
That's
just
my prediction
just
anyway.
a like I know. I mean, I'm sure that they are very aware of it, but the synergy they could have had. Go see this movie and then have a new game, even if it's like I don't know. I mean, I guess not a movie tie-in, but something new out there for someone who wants to buy Mario games.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have plenty of Mario games on Switch as it is, so I'm
That is
sure
true.
that a lot of these people, I'm sure they've seen their sales skyrocket because, like, I think that a lot of people
Yeah.
probably left that theater wanting to play a Mario game, whether that meant they went out and bought a Switch altogether, or if that means like, oh, I already have a Switch, let me buy Mario Odyssey or Mario 3D World. Like, I
Yeah, I
think
think
those are.
so.
And there was the Mario Day sale that I don't know if that was going on when the movie came out. I think it wraps up in a couple of days here, if I'm not mistaken. I thought they had like a full month kind of blocked off with that.
Yeah,
So
and they were
maybe
selling
we'll.
that combo pack with the red Mario
Yeah, they
Switch.
did that. That's true. Yeah, that probably helped as well. But speaking of Tears of the Kingdom, that's what we're going to end the news segment with here, Wesley. A
Ooh.
couple of quick things here. I mentioned last week when we went over the final pre-launch trailer that I thought that Ganondorf's voice was none other than that of Persona, Overwatch, and Resident Evil voice actor Matthew Mercer. And it turns out I was right. I didn't want to get too sure of myself because, like, I've actually spent time with the guy. We've seen each other multiple times in person.
Humble
I,
brag.
I hung out with him at the Fortnite party at E3 one year, which was fun. Turns out he's a big music nerd, which is awesome because so am I.
That is
And
awesome.
so I didn't want to be like, oh yeah, like, that's him totally, because then like if I'm wrong, then that makes me really look bad. And like voice actors are chameleons, so it's also like you don't want to get too sure. But yeah, Mercer did confirm that he is, in fact, the voice of Ganondorf in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and he put out a series of tweets. Here's what he had to say. He said, quote, I just got the go-ahead from Nintendo, so I can finally announce my absolute pleasure to be voicing Ganondorf in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, an immense honor that I have thrown myself into doing justice. And then he continued in subsequent tweets saying, quote, I have been an immense Legend of Zelda fan since I was a child, and Ganondorf has been one of my favorite antagonists to the point where I portrayed this green-skinned menace for my web series over a decade ago. I actually knew about that. That was very funny, and to see this come full circle. And then he continued. Many of you know the weight of expectation on my shoulders for this, and I hope to do you proud. A huge thank you to Nintendo and the entire Tears of the Kingdom team for entrusting me with such a badass. So, how are you feeling about Ganondorf's portrayal in the trailers so far?
It's great. I think it's the best Ganondorf has ever been. And I also, I mean, we've only seen like 30 seconds of this Ganondorf, and it just goes so hard. Whenever I forget the line, but whatever that one line is where he's like bear witness to the birth of a new kingdom or whatever, that goes so hard. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to save Hyrule. I'm folding in with Ganondorf. Whatever he needs, like that's what Link's doing.
Yeah, and then the first trailer the trailer where we first heard his voice, where he kind of gives like that the rise, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a really cool monologue and like lay waste to leave no survivors. Like, man, he's going for it. I love it.
It's
This is the
nice to
Ganondorf
have
we
like,
need.
yeah, Ganondorf with personality and Again, like it's nice. It's going to be refreshing, and if they hired Mercer, that tells me like we must be getting a lot of this Ganondorf. I don't know. You don't spend big money on a voice actor and only have them say like 4 lines, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, I really am looking forward to seeing not only how he brings his character life, 'cause I think he's one of the most talented voice actors working currently in
Hmm.
video games,
Yep.
but also like just I want to see like more of this story, but I'm kind of happy that we haven't. We just get like little tastes of it, right? Like the last trailer,
Hmm.
it we got some glimpses of Ganondorf finally, but also like it looks like we had Demise and all kinds of things happening, like different characters from Breath of the Wild popping up. So there's some really cool stuff that might go down in this story, and I really, really am excited. Like I'm almost as excited for the story as I am for like the other stuff. So
Yeah.
hopefully, I like that they're playing their cards close to the vest, but hopefully we get some more information about some of this stuff in relative short order because I'm champing at the bit here.
I think
Uh,
I'm ready to just like go media blackout. I mean, it's tougher to do with this job because we do cover things, but
yeah,
like if I don't have to watch something or read about something, I'm going to do my best not to because I'm so sold and I just want as much of that game to be new to me as possible. It's going to be, I just cannot wait. I'm already telling my wife, like, hey, May is going to be a lot of breath or a lot of Tears of the Kingdom, just so you know.
oh, I've already informed my partner that I'm just gonna be like, yep. Just so you know, don't let's not schedule anything in the
Yeah.
evenings for
Yeah.
like 2 weeks here, because
Yeah.
that's just all I'm gonna be doing basically.
I'm going on a vacation at the end of May, and I've already like told my friends and stuff that I'm going with, like, hey, just so you know, if there's any downtime, you will see a Switch in my hand.
Yeah, I can't wait for this game, as you might imagine. But finally, Nintendo has released the main theme of Tears of the Kingdom through its Japanese website, and it is so good. And we're actually going to go into our first break listening to a portion of it so the listeners of this fine podcast can get a taste. When we get back, we will be chatting about a couple of new Switch releases for this week. We will be right back. Originally scheduled to come out in 2022, Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp was delayed in the wake of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but now, 1 year after it was originally set to arrive, the collection came out on Switch today. So I have played a little bit of this. We have our full review up on GameInformer.com, but I just wanted to give kind of my initial impressions of this game, this collection, I guess you would say. But first, Wes, do you have any history with the Advance Wars series or any like awareness of it?
I have basically zero. Whenever the remaster got announced, is when I learned Advanced Wars was a thing, which
Oh
I guess is
wow.
a problem because like I'm a big fan of Fire Emblem, so I feel like I need to jump on this series.
Yeah, like I'm actually kind of surprised that you didn't even have an awareness of it. So the first two came out on Game Boy Advance, and I think there was one additional one that came out on DS. And this one gathers the first two. So it's just the Game Boy Advance games. It's Advance Wars 1 and Advance Wars 2 Black Hole Rising. Those have been remastered and are available in this collection. But basically, it's pretty faithful. It allows you to go into the campaigns and just experience these stories like as they were originally laid out, and you have improved visuals, you have better like animations and everything, better graphics, but really it's pretty faithful, and it's nice that they're bringing more of these games over. It is kind of surprising that we got this shortly after the Game Boy Advance collection started appearing on Nintendo Switch.
Yeah.
So I wonder how they're going to differ. I mean, I'm assuming they had this in development for a long time before Nintendo had that plan to bring Game Boy Advance onto Switch. But like, it's still kind of like, how are they going to draw the line there? Like we've talked about this, where like, all right, Pokemon, if they wanted to do like the Game Boy Advance games on to Switch, like would they be standalone or would they appear on the Game Boy Advance catalog? Like that, how would they handle that? And I think that if they did like a remaster, it would probably be like this, but otherwise I think it needs to go on the catalog. I think it would be very weird to try to sell standalone games that aren't remastered in any kind of way.
You think so though with Pokemon? I don't like people would buy it. I would buy it,
They would buy
unfortunately.
it, but it would also
Yeah.
be like, all right, well, what's the point of this thing if we're not getting the biggest games in it?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
I don't
fair.
know. But Advance Wars 1 plus 2, I don't know if it's 1 plus 2 or 1 and 2 Reboot Camp. I'm having a really good time with it. I'm not super deep. I'm a few missions into the first game, and I've got to say, it runs really smooth. It translates well to the Joy Cons and the kind of the Pro controller that I've been using. And it's just really sound turn-based tactics. I don't think it has the depth of a Fire Emblem, but it has very similar mechanics in that, like, the commanding officers all have CO powers, one of which like kind of makes it so your characters are lucky for a turn, which means they get more critical hits. But yeah, you have a lot of different like troop types at your disposal, different units. That's the word I was looking for. So like there's tanks, there's infantrymen, there's air support, there's artillery, which can do longer range shots but can't move and fire on the same turn. And it's very like kind of modern war themed, which it's nice to kind of return to that, because the game that I've always recommended to people to check out in the absence of Advance Wars was a game called Wargroove, which is very much inspired by the Advance Wars series. Did you ever play Wargroove?
No, I didn't. Maybe I have it. Isn't I think it's on Xbox too, right? I think
Yeah,
I might
yeah.
have it downloaded from Game Pass, but I've never actually started it up. That's the one with
You,
the dogs and stuff.
yeah. I think there's dogs. It's medieval and like kind of like fantasy themed. So
Hmm.
I think there are dogs in that one. I haven't played since it first came out, but I remember playing that and be like, oh yeah, this is just Advance Wars, and I had a great time with it. There's a Wargroove 2 coming at some point, I think in the next year or so, that was just recently announced. But
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
it's nice to have this game take us back to kind of the modern combat setting, because I don't know, I'm more partial to that than I am kind of like the knights on horseback and all those kinds of units. I much prefer kind of like the infantrymen with like rocket launchers and the air support coming in and like the aircraft carriers and that type of stuff. Like that's kind of that appeals to me more. But does this sound like a game that you're going to want to check out?
I think I don't know. I go back and forth with it because I'm kind of like the opposite of you, where I'm not too interested in the idea of like tanks and war and guns and stuff. I like the more fantastical approach that Fire Emblem and other games have. But I do really love these types of games, and I know that this one's pretty beloved. So I think if I played it, I'd probably just jump right to two based on our review on the site, where one
Mm-hmm.
kind of sounds like just a prolonged tutorial, where two is where it kind of gets into the meat of the series. But yeah, it might be something I pick up one day.
It's also worth noting that there's multiplayer, both online and local. Oddly enough, you can do more players local than you can online. Like you can only do two players online, but if you have like
Wow, interesting.
if you have four people locally, you can do four player, which I don't understand how that works. I haven't gathered four people to play it. But then there's also a map creator, which is kind of cool, where Wargroove kind of actually carried that even further. They let you kind of create your own campaign, which is really cool. But yeah, I mean, it's a really sound strategy game, turn based, grid based, and I mean, honestly, if you like Fire Emblem, it's probably going to be up your alley. And
Yeah,
yeah, I'm very happy that this is finally out, and it's a long time coming at this point, because we learned about it in 2020, I think. I don't know when it was first
yeah,
announced, but
yeah.
it's finally here, and it seems like it was worth the wait. We had a freelancer review it for us, Josh Broadwell, and he gave it an 8.5 out of 10. And his quote here was, Advance Wars 1 plus 2 Reboot Camp might not include much new material, but it presents a strong case that classic games don't always have to change to be relevant again. Sometimes they just need a second chance. And honestly, that line alone sold me on checking this game out, and that's why I've been doing it. And I'm having a great time. And with so much coming on the horizon, like Star Wars Jedi Survivor and Tears of the Kingdom, I don't know how much more I'm going to play of it, but I think it's definitely a worthwhile play. And it's a very good strategy game. It's not my favorite strategy game. My favorite would probably be XCOM 2,
Hmm.
just because that's kind of more my speed, where there's like a lot of risk reward balancing.
Yeah.
This is much more straightforward than that, I think. But yeah, I'm liking it. It's out now on Switch. So the other game that I wanted to talk about with you is more of a series. It is the
Yeah.
Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster series. So I know that you've been checking this out a little bit. I got to ask you before we jump into your impressions, what game did you start with?
I started with Final Fantasy 1.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's unexpected.
it is. I was talking with Marcus. We did a new gameplay today on YouTube that you can go check out right now if you want to see how these games look and feel and hear us reminisce. Um, Weirdly enough, I mean, I think 6 is the best of these games, but like one might be my favorite only because I just have such fond memories of picking up the UMD of Final Fantasy 1 and playing it on my PSP
Oh my
and
god.
being like, this is the game that like started this series I already love because I'd played a bunch of others at that point. Um, and yeah, like booting it up on Switch, I was like, it's nostalgic and it's simplicity. Like you start the game, there's like a couple sentences of setup as the, the little FMV plays or cutscene, and then you talk to the king for 2 seconds, and you're on your way to go find Garland and save the king's daughter. And there's like something. It's just nostalgic. But I mean, 6 is the best one. That was the second game I checked out for sure.
Yeah, I mean, 6 is the one that everybody just instantly goes to. I know that 4 is also much beloved. I think those are the kind of the two mainstays that people will tell you, like, oh yeah, you need
Yeah.
to play those two games if you're going to play like the classic Final Fantasy games. Like, I think that it kind of goes like, all right, the classic series, you got to play 4 and you got to play 6.
Hmm.
The modern series, you kind of got to play 7 and you got to play 10, and or like I guess like the contemporary series would be 7 and 10, and then the modern series, I think that a lot of people will tell you, don't bother. No, I think
No.
I'm a big fan of both 13 and 15, but
And
I think that
12. I'm gonna show some love to 12. I love 12.
I could never get into 12, but I also haven't played the Zodiac Age remake or remaster that they
It's
did
really good.
that streamlined a lot of stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I think 4 and 6 are kind of the winners here if you're not sure where to start with this, but I think it's a cheaper endeavor to buy the bundle, but it's still pretty expensive. I think it's $75 for the full bundle.
Yeah. If you want to play all of these, get the bundle. But if you're only interested in checking out the highlights like 4 and 6, like we just talked about, then yeah, obviously buy them separately.
So have you checked out any of the new features?
I did, yeah. So I'll kind of just go down them because there's a good bit. The probably my favorite is the fact that you can change soundtracks at any time in these games. So you can
Mhm.
play the classic version, which is like the NES or SNES, like retro sound, like that's the what it sounded like back in the day, or you can switch to an arrangement version, which is going to be like a modern day orchestral arrangement, which is really cool. It's fun playing Final Fantasy 1 and switching back and forth on the home screen to hear the prelude like as it was and now as it is. So I think that's really cool. You can change the fonts. Oh my gosh,
I know that
it's the
was the
biggest
big
deal.
thing for
Yeah,
a lot of people.
it's I mean, yeah, the modern day font was pretty ugly. The font conversation was still extremely surprising to me. I was telling Marcus, like, other than when it comes to accessibility, because that's a very important thing when it comes to fonts and caption sizes and all that. I think this game might have the most talked about fonts of all time.
But it's always been that way. I remember when they put Final Fantasy VI on mobile phones,
Oh,
everybody was
that
like, "Oh, the
yeah.
font is awful." And
I
it's
feel like
like,
the
huh?
mobile versions were just completely lambasted because that was like the weird 3D, like soft looking art style. They kind of got rid of all the pixel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, you can switch between the modern font, which is like the one that you probably have seen that people dislike, or you can switch to a new pixel based font that's the classic feel. I have seen some people still not super thrilled with the classic font because the spacing is still a little strange. Like you'll have a whole box for text, but the classic font won't come close to filling it up. Personally, I'm not like, the font's not the biggest deal in the world to me, so I haven't paid it too much attention, but I know it's a hot topic for some people. And then probably my favorite features would be what I would call the things you can do to expedite the games. So you can turn off random encounters completely, which is cool. If you just want to kind of get the story, you can do that. Keep in mind, you'll still need to like somehow level up because you can't just take down bosses if you've been skipping random encounters.
Mm-hmm.
But to accommodate random encounters or the lack of, if you don't want that on, there's boost features, and you can boost your experience by I think 0.5, 1, which would just be standard experience gain, 2, and then 4 times. So if you wanted
It's
to skip,
incredible.
yeah, if you wanted to skip a lot of random encounters, you could, and then go and turn on that 4 times experience boost, spend an hour grinding, and I think you'd be set. So that's a really cool thing. And then you can do the same with Gil. You can do the same with the money that you earn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can change
I
that
was
to
wondering about that.
yeah, 4 times or 2 times. So you could turn off random encounters for a lot of the game, then go turn on 4 times Gil and 4 times experience boost. Level up quickly, get a lot of Gil quickly, go buy the best weapons, and then kind of be on your merry way. Which I think is, that's good. I don't if you're someone who's like, I want to play these 6 games to experience like, the first 6 games in Final Fantasy history, I don't think you necessarily need to do the grinding that each game has. You're kind of here to get like, okay, what are the big hits of these games? And these features allow you to do that. I know I'll be using them, and yeah, I haven't. There something I think I would like would be in Final Fantasy 12, the remaster Zodiac Age. You can turn on like your movement speed to different levels. Like you can sprint through 12, and I wish something like that was in here. And maybe there is. I haven't dug too deep into these games yet, but in the options and stuff, I have not found.
It wasn't advertised with that, so I
Yeah,
doubt it.
it's a feature I wish was in every single of Final Fantasy Remaster. I think 7, when it came to PS4 and Switch, has that feature, if I'm not mistaken. And I love it because, yeah, walking 4 times faster in those games like really speeds up playing through them. And it's one of my biggest complaints about the Final Fantasy 10 and 10-2 remasters, that those came out before they started implementing that. So you still have to play those games at like standard speed, I think.
Yeah, and they do walk a little slow in those
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
original games. Which would you prefer? Like, say the Pixel Remaster series is out now. It seems like you're pretty positive on it.
Yeah.
Which would you prefer in terms of a remake of Final Fantasy VI? Would you prefer the HD 2D style, or would you
Ooh.
prefer like the Final Fantasy VII remake approach of like just reimagining it as a modernized game?
It's funny. Me and Marcus were kind of talking about this too on our NGT. I think I would go, now that the Pixel remaster exists, I think I would go the Final Fantasy VII um, remake style, only because I do like HD 2D, but kind of the main reason I wanted HD 2D was to give me that like modern pixel look. And
Hmm.
I feel like I'm satisfied on that frontier. Whereas a remake would be very cool. I don't know if I want them to go as far as 7, where they are, doing drastic changes to storylines potentially. But I wouldn't mind, controlling Terra in a Magitech mech, like in real time, as like from a third person view and fighting with action and stuff.
With those visuals.
Yeah, it'd be great. And if you don't like it, the original classic versions exist, and then also this Pixel remaster exists. So I think I'd be really cool with it.
If there was,
Ideally, I get all
oh,
of them.
yeah, I don't know if Square Enix is gonna greenlight all of them,
Yeah.
but if there was any Final Fantasy that needed to get a remake in the 7 style, like with those visuals, that kind of like modernized action and everything, which would you pick?
Oh gosh.
Because like I know you love 13, you love 12,
I wouldn't
but
pick 13 or
those are
12.
both modern enough that I don't think that they really warrant it.
Yeah, and part of the charm for me with 12 is its combat, which I don't want that changed. I like its kind of MMO-ish nature. 13, same way. I think 13's combat system rules the active time battle. Gosh. Um, I mean, 6 would be great. 1 is not necessary. We kind of have that with Stranger of Paradise in a weird way. Um, I think maybe my mind's going to 10 because I love that world so much, and it'd be cool to experience it in a new way.
10 is, I think, the last Final Fantasy game that really warrants a remake at this point.
Yeah,
And again, 10 is one of my top 3 games of all time. And I just played 10 2. Have you played 10 2?
I have played most of it, but I have not actually beaten
Okay,
it.
because it seems like if you love 13, like the battle
Yeah,
system seems very, very kind of seminal for 13's battle system.
I had a good time with it. I was playing it most recently during my last year of college, and then college started kicking my butt, and that game kind of went to the wayside.
Yeah, I mean, I recently I recently played the HD remaster of 10-2 for the first time, and I got all the way through it. And yeah, I think that you would enjoy it if you picked up that remaster, or if you didn't already pick up that remaster and you fired it up. I think that you'd have a good time.
I've been thinking about playing 10. I'm in a very, very big Final Fantasy mood just after the
I can
recent like
tell.
Final Fantasy 16 State of Play, and that game's coming out soon. Like I've got these pixel remasters. I'm playing Final Fantasy 14 again, the MMO.
Oh
I
my god,
downloaded Final Fantasy 15 literally yesterday because I was like, maybe I'll just play the beginning again to kind of,
I
you know,
love that game so much, and I
yeah,
know a lot of people crap all over it, and I understand like where they're coming from, but
yeah.
man, do I love that game.
If you play like just the first few hours, like I'm because that's kind of what I'm thinking about doing. That's a great time. That opening is awesome. And yeah, I just can't get enough Final Fantasy right now. So I was looking at my Switch version of 10.2 and 10 because last time I played those was on Vita.
Oh
And
yeah,
I'm like, man, maybe I boot up 10 again.
what I did, where you start at 10, play all the way through that, do watch the Eternal Calm cinematic that's included in the HD collection, and then that bridges the gap between 10 and 10-2, and then play through 10-2, but use a guide on 10-2. That's one thing I will say is
It's
use a.
funny you mentioned a guide. I actually own a physical strategy guide of
Oh my
10.2.
god, yeah, then do it. But okay, well, yeah, again, do it as I tell you, like all these things that I don't have time to play.
Yeah.
But
I think I can beat like what, 9 Final Fantasy games before Tears of the Kingdom in 2 or 3 weeks. Should be easy.
yeah, there's nothing else coming out. It's not like Star Wars Jedi Survivor or anything is coming out, and you don't have any other
Gosh.
obligations
Well,
or work.
I got to buy a different PS5 to play that so I can have room to play it.
Oh no. But anything else we need to say about the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster series? I know we kind of took a detour there, but I think we covered this pretty well.
Yeah, if you're interested, I'll just say like unless you want to put in some work, you should probably just go digital. Physical has been sold out with Square Enix for a long time, and then there's like one other site, I think PlayAsia is sometimes selling physical editions, but yeah, you know, it's like trying to buy a PS5. They go quick. It's impossible to get. So like, if you're like, oh, I would really love to have these games, just you might want to save yourself the trouble and the heartbreak and just buy the digital versions.
Yeah, I mean, you might get lucky, but also you might just be refreshing very often. Or I don't even know
Yeah,
if Wario64 is still on Twitter. I've completely detached myself from
he
Twitter,
is. Yeah, he is.
but he's a must follow if you still partake in
Yes.
that website. And
But yeah, you
he'll.
can't. These games aren't. They're like not being sold in any other stores. It's weird. Like just Square Enix and then seemingly PlayAsia, which
Oh,
I don't think
interesting.
is like a stateside like
No, I think that's
website.
considered
Yeah,
an import.
yeah. So yeah, I'd love to pick this up in GameStop or Walmart or Target or wherever, but it's just not a thing.
Yeah, well, I guess that digital might be the way to go if you're looking for this, but and that's also allows you to pick them up individually.
Yes.
But both Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster Series and Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp are available on Switch now. Wes, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at LeBlancWest, and you can find my voice sometimes on the Game Informer YouTube channel. Again, go check out the latest new gameplay today where me and Marcus of Game Informer talk about this Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster collection. And then, of course, you can see my words in the Game Informer magazines and on our website every day.
Well, Wes, thank you so much for joining me. We are going to take one final break for this episode. When we get back, Kyle Hilliard is going to join me for a short discussion about an anniversary that happened this week. We will be right back. In lieu of definitive ranking and eShop Gem of the Week this episode, we are going to talk about a Nintendo anniversary that just hit yesterday. Joining me for that is Kyle Hilliard. Kyle, welcome back to All Things Nintendo.
Was I gone last week?
You were gone for so long.
I'm
I think
pretty
you
gone
were. It's
quite
been like
a
a
lot.
week.
You're so demanding of my time.
Kyle, you know very well the anniversary that we were talking about, but I haven't really mentioned it to the listeners yet, unless they've read the show notes. That anniversary is the Nintendo Labo, which turned 5 years old the day of this recording. And for those who don't remember, Labo came. It's basically a bunch of different sets that let you build cardboard accessories, and then you could plug the Joy-Cons in and just basically do like these weird little like mini games and like experiments. And When I asked you to be on for this topic, you mentioned that you might have played it more than anybody else. Why was that?
Well, because I like reviewed it all.
But
Is what
was
it
there
comes
any
down
like
to.
was there any curiosity on your end, or were you just kind of
Oh,
like
hell
handed
yeah.
the assignment?
No, 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 absolutely. The moment it was announced, I was like, this is weird and cool. This is like the kind of bizarre Nintendo stuff that I love, right? Like the most recent example of this is the fitness one. I don't know why can't the name is not
Ring Fit Adventure.
Ring Fit Adventure, absolutely. And the Mario Kart, the real world Mario Kart. Like I love those kind of things that like I just never in a million years would have guessed were coming from Nintendo. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
and
I was fascinated by it when they released it. I went on maybe my most unique work trip ever to check it out, like pre-release, like we did a big preview for it.
mhm.
And the thing that was so weird about it and cool was Nintendo, like they invited my kid to come with me.
Oh,
Like they're
that's
like,
right.
come check it out and bring your kids so they can check it out, because it was very much like focused towards younger players. So that was cool to like have her come with me and be like, yeah, this is kind of what I do for work. And I got to sort of see her reaction to this Labo thing. And then when it came out, I reviewed it properly and even messed with a bunch of the follow-up things. Like I don't know if I would go so far as to call myself a fan. Like I wouldn't really call myself like a big Labo defender. It's not like some hidden gem that not enough people played and should have been the next revolution. Like I think it was an interesting experiment that worked sometimes and other times didn't. But like I will always be appreciative of it, and I'm glad that it exists, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it was announced in January of 2018 as I believe a part of the first Nintendo Direct of that year, and I guess Reggie Fils-Aimé was the person introducing it, and he said, "quote Labo is unlike anything we've done before," and I think that's pretty fair.
I know, it's like those sort of statements that publishers and developers make are you usually write them off immediately, and you can recall like a dozen examples of variations of this thing that you're claiming is unlike anything you've done before. But this, I think they earned it. Like this was totally unexpected and bizarre and weird.
Yeah, so for people who aren't familiar with Labo, I kind of gave a brief like mention of what exactly it is, but can you talk at like a super high level about how it worked? And we'll go into like the individual kits after this.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, Labo was it was like a creation like you got these sheets of cardboard, and then the software was basically like similar to like building a Lego set, where it would give you these really detailed instructions, and you would fold cardboard and not even like tape it together, but like lock it together in different ways to build contraptions that you could insert Joy-Cons into to interact with in weird ways. Like you could make a piano where you would make all the individual keys out of cardboard and you could play piano. I made a fishing rod, and you would put the Joy-Con in the fishing rod and you could play a fishing game. And there were a couple of driving games as well. You would build a steering wheel and you could put the Joy-Cons in there and drive around with a cardboard steering wheel and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and they were called Toy Cons, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, gosh, it's been a while. It's been
it's like
5 years, I would say.
Yeah, 5 years exactly. And so yeah, they were called Toy Cons, each individual little like
Good name.
build that you did, which was a very good name. And they actually encouraged you to decorate the kits with like markers and stickers to kind of make them your own, which I thought was kind of cool. Because like you could have definitely imagined a world where like a publisher would be too precious about this stuff and be like not advertising that. Like obviously you can do whatever you want with like if you buy like an N64 cartridge, people were like drawing their names on the back and putting stickers on it and stuff. But like Nintendo was never like, hey, you should do this with your N64 cartridges.
Well, they even had instructions like when you were building the thing to be like, use markers, don't use paint, and here's why. And it would show like because paint would dry out the cardboard and make it like bend and fold and stuff like that. So they really thought about all those elements of it.
Oh, interesting. So I never actually got my hands on Labo, aside from maybe like in passing when you had the kits out at your desk in the office.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those things that everyone stopped by and were like, okay, I gotta at least touch this thing and see what it is.
So there were several kits that you could buy. At launch, there were only two. So there was the variety kit, which I think was like kind of the mainstay one that had 2 remote control cars, a fishing rod, a toy piano that you mentioned, and a motorbike, and then a house. So those were all
Right.
the different toy cons you could have.
And the
And an up,
piano was like far and away kind of the most interesting, impressive thing of the bundle.
yeah, and that allows you to play music, and they also interact with like the software in different ways.
I would
And did
also
you?
suggest you Google, I think IGN had it. John Carpenter plays Labo,
Oh my
and he
god, I
tried to
forgot
play the
about that.
Halloween theme on the Labo piano, and he was not into it. He did not like it. It's a great video.
So yeah, those came out. I know that there were some games that actually supported Labo. So like there was a fishing game that supported the fishing rod thing. I forget what the game was called, but it was like a third party indie fishing game, and they were like, yeah,
Oh,
you can use
really?
the Labo fishing rod Toy-Con to play this game.
Oh, I had no idea. That's
And
cool.
the motorbike Toy-Con from the variety kit, there was an update for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe to let you control your cart using that Toy-Con.
Yeah, right. Why not? You know?
Yeah, sure. And then the other one that came out at that same time at the launch was a robot kit, and that was a kind of like a big like backpack that you built, and you put it on your back, and then there were like these pulleys that you could throw like punching motions, and that would control the robot that was in the software. But like, wasn't there like a thing that you put on your head and everything as well?
Yeah, it would basically, it was like a pulley system in the backpack, and then you would attach ropes to your arms and legs, and you would put on this little visor to kind of just like give you the effect that you were like looking through a hole, you know. I went back and read my reviews that I had written for these kits when they came out, and I did not like that one.
No.
That one was like the weakest. Like that was it was pretty funny to read it, because I was very much like, don't get this one. This one like is like the least fun to make and works the least. Like, just go get the piano. The piano's the way more interesting and fun one.
Okay, well, I mean, I remember you being actually not super hyped on the robot kit, but yeah, the piano you definitely took to. Then there were 3 that came out afterwards. Did you play any of the after that the post launch kits that they
Uh,
got out?
yes. And now you'll have to refresh my memory, because I know the third one was like
There was a
car
vehicle kit. So
vehicle kit.
that
Yeah.
came out a few months
Posts.
after, and that had steering mechanisms for 3 different vehicles. There was a car, which again was usable in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and then there was a plane and a submarine. So it was like different,
Yeah.
like kind of like cockpit type situations for
Do you remember?
those.
Do you know what the second one was? I don't. You probably have some notes in front of you.
There was the VR kit.
Is that the second one?
That was so there was the variety kit, the robot kit, and then the first post launch one was the vehicle kit,
Okay.
and then there was the VR kit, which let you build like a cardboard
Yeah.
VR headset.
Well, before we talk about that, I do want to highlight the vehicle kit, which
Okay.
I think is the best Labo thing. If you had some weird itch to check out Labo and you wanted to go on eBay, the best one to get is the Vehicle Kit 3, because the game that was included with it was actually like pretty fully featured and interesting. It was like a big open world that you could drive around and do a bunch of tasks and stuff like that. That one I liked quite a bit. I never gave it like a proper review, but I know that we have like an old, episode of New Game Played Today featuring Jeff Corrick and Leo Vader, where I showed off a bunch of it, and I kind of watched a few minutes of it in preparation for this, and I was like, man, this thing was actually pretty cool. Like, watching it back again. So that one was interesting, but the VR one is maybe the most interesting of all the
Interesting,
Labo
yes.
stuff.
So
Great. I did not use the word like good or exciting. I just interesting.
it's such a weird thing because it's just like a literally a VR headset, and you put your Switch screen in front of, like, you basically attach it to this VR headset.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then
It's like a something you hold up to your face. It's like a like a face mask that you can put the Switch in, and then you hold it up to your face. It's very strange.
it's very Virtual Boy-esque, which is a very
Yes.
weird thing for Nintendo want to like revisit, right?
Yeah, and like they were always pretty bullish on VR when, like right when Oculus was coming out and PlayStation was messing with VR and Microsoft was developing these relationships with Oculus, where they like, if you bought an Oculus set for a while, it came with an Xbox controller and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And during that time, people would ask Nintendo like, what's your VR thing going to be? And their response was always like, nothing. Like, we don't care. But then this came out and it was surprising.
So this worked with Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker, but like in very weird and limited capacities, right?
Right, except for Breath of the Wild. You could play the full game in VR, basically.
And was it first person then?
No, it's basically you just play third person Breath of the Wild with like stereoscopic 3D, and then like as if you moved your head, you could like kind of move the camera around. Um, but it's like, and then yeah, the Mario Odyssey thing was very much just like a little side mode. Which if you boot up Mario Odyssey now, it still has that on the start menu. It'll be like, hey, check out the Labo version or the Labo VR version. You know what I mean? Because like Ben Hansen at MinMax was talking about how with the Mario movie coming out, he was showing his nephews Mario Odyssey like 6 months ago or something, and that was like a big bold sticker on the start menu. It's like Labo VR. It's like, still there,
I think he actually may have brought that up when he was on this show. It was like, it's weird that like one of the best Mario games of all time just has this big thing on the main menu about Labo VR, and it's just there forever.
I know, yeah. Mario. You said Mario Kart, and what was the other one?
No, so for
Captain
VR, it's
Toad.
Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Smash Ultimate.
That's the one I never tried. Okay, Smash, or maybe I did. Jeez.
And then Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker as well.
Definitely never tried that.
But apparently, like the Captain Toad Treasure Tracker just let you kind of like get in like down in the level itself and just look around the environments. I don't know if it actually was like playable in that.
Yeah, that's kind of fun. Yeah, Breath of the Wild was like charming, but also kind of stupid because like the contraption does not strap to your head like every other VR headset. So you actually had the controllers were like attached to the side, and then you had to kind of push it against your face. And like the only frankly reasonable way that you could actually play Breath of the Wild using Labo VR was to lay on your back and put and rest the headset on your face. But then that would limit your movement. Like you wouldn't really be able to take advantage of the VR-ness of it all and look around. Like it's one of those novelties that I was like, I'm glad they took the time to do this, but no reasonable person would ever play this for more than a few minutes.
I mean, I remember walking into the bullpen when you were checking this out, and you were laying completely flat on the ground with the Labo and the Switch attached to your face.
Right. Yes. Yeah, it was ridiculous. And I do remember, I think it was Andre Seegers from Game Explain. I think he had a video at the time that was really like, he had a way that he really liked it. He was super into it. And I was always like, all right, man, you do you.
So those are the first 4 kits that came out. There was a 5th kit that I actually did not know existed. And I only found this through research, and I don't see it anywhere. So I'm actually looking up how much these kits are going for on Amazon right now. And you can get the vehicle drive kit, which you were pretty stoked on.
That's, I think, the best one, honestly, yeah.
$32 right now on Amazon. And it has Prime overnight shipping, according to my computer. And then the variety kit was $120 according to Amazon. Now it's down to $110, so minor discount there. And then the robot kit looks like it's $29.
Okay, all those these are not like rare, like overpriced things on eBay.
They were either going to be one way or the other. I thought they were either going to be like, all right, this is now $700, or it's now like barely anything.
God, I'm kind of honestly, I'm sort of eyeing this VR one right now.
How much are you seeing the VR one? Because I'm seeing it for $300 on Amazon.
I'm seeing one for like $65, but the box is all beat up because it's just so weird that it's kind of one of those things. It's like, I wish I kind of had, just because it's so strange.
Got to play Mario Odyssey in it.
I don't think I ever messed with Smash Brothers. I wonder what that was like.
Yeah, I don't know
what the VR Smash Brothers stuff was.
So the 5th one that I had no idea about, and I don't see it anywhere on Amazon, is the Toy-Con Garage, which maybe it's not a kit. Maybe it's just a software you can download, and then, because what the whole point of it was, you could create and program your own Toy-Con.
Right. So this was included with every Labo thing you would buy.
Oh, okay.
Like if I'm remembering correctly, it wasn't it was like software that let you be more creative with it. It was like
Hmm.
it wasn't like you would get a new set of cardboard things. It was more like you can use these tools to do weird stuff. And it was just sort of like included with every Labo piece of software, I think.
Gotcha. Okay,
Feel free to
so
correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
this actually went on to inspire the non-Labo software known as Game Builder Garage
Right.
that came out in 2021, and I remember being pretty excited about that, and then I never fired it up because that
I
was like a simple like programming
yeah.
software, right?
I sat down with my kiddo and we started it, but the tutorials are dense and heavy up top, and it doesn't let you just jump into like playing around with the tools and getting lost. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't even let you try to mess around. Like it was like you have to do 4 hours of tutorials before we even give you the tools. And me and I think a lot of other people as well, as a result, kind of bounced off of it and didn't really give it the chance it maybe deserved.
I mean, didn't Dreams do it that way as well, where it's like, yeah, you're gonna just have to play through these tutorials if you want to get
Um,
anything.
I mean, that's a good question. I think Dreams, gosh, I think it would it let you off the leash pretty early. I think if I remember correctly, it's been a long time. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and then it's a shame that they're starting to sunset that because it seems like people really embraced those creation tools and they created some pretty cool
Yeah,
stuff.
there's some really cool stuff in Dreams.
Which didn't
Yeah.
seem. I never heard of anything coming out of Game Builder Garage, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah, right when it launched, there were a couple of weird, interesting things. Someone fully made like F-Zero, like the
Oh
original Super
wow.
Nintendo F-Zero, using the tools or something, which is like that's one of those things that's like, oh, it's cool that you can do that. And it's like, but now what? Kind of is like the sort of the reaction. But yeah, never really found its sort of its subreddit kind of area for people to just like go crazy with it, you
Yeah.
know?
Because that was always the coolest part of Mario Maker, right? Is like, oh, all these people are making these really cool, intricate, like concepts within the Mario creation tool set. Like, it would have been awesome if like that same subset of people kind of made the jump to Game Builder Garage and started sharing games that you could play. That would have been really
Yeah.
awesome to have that community that initially backed Mario Maker back on the Wii U, because that was when it was really popping,
Which,
to
by the
have
way,
that.
same thing for the Labo Garage, because like the kind of weird stuff you could make was really interesting. Like you could use the IR cameras on the Joy Cons, and like they when they were first showing it off and they showed like some of the things they had made internally just using the tools they made like a vending machine out of cardboard and stuff like that. And I remember like when Labo was coming out, I was like, I really want to see what creative kids do at this, because it's a much more tactile version of creativity as opposed to like Little Big Planet at the time or Mario Maker at the time, right?
Mhm.
Where it was like, instead of making software, it was like, well, we actually have hardware combined with software where you can make physical real world things using like the packages your Amazon products come in. But that just never really came to exist in a real way. You know, maybe there was some of it, but
Yeah, I haven't really looked into like what people were doing with like the kind of the creativity side of the toy cons and everything, but I bet there's some really fascinating stuff out there.
I hope so. Yeah.
So when you look back at Labo 5 years later, what's kind of like the first thing that pops into your mind about like, oh, that thing?
I reflect on it positively, right? I like how weird it was. I like that nothing like it existed beforehand, and nothing will exist like it ever again. I don't think, being too pessimistic, but I just like how the thing that always sticks out to me is like, God, that was weird. What a weird, unique thing that only a company like Nintendo would invest in. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, that's the thing about Nintendo, is that leads me to the final question I have for you here, is like, where does Nintendo go from here with this concept? Because they're not one to like introduce a thing and then never revisit it again. It's like if something fails or something doesn't really get the market share that they thought it would, usually they'll put it in their pocket, and then it could be up to 20 years later they resurface it with an iteration on that same basic idea.
Yeah, I mean, I would be very curious to know how it's sold, you know? Like I wonder if like internally if Nintendo looks at it as a failure or just like met expectations but didn't sort of blow up the world, because like Ring Fit it was a huge success. And as far
Mhm.
as I know, continues to be a huge success. It's sold very well, continues to sell very well. And it's one of those games that lingers. Like every couple of months, I'll see someone I know on Twitter or something being like, all right, I'm going to play Ring Fit. You know, I'm going to dive into Ring Fit again. And Labo never became that, right? It was not this sort of like surprise success. But in the future, I mean, the best one, like I said, was the vehicle kit, which was like a dedicated game.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see another stab at something like that, right? Like a dedicated game with a surprise Labo kit that like, and the game is really interesting and cool. Like I'm less excited about like now you can play Breath of the Wild in VR. Now you can use a steering wheel to play Mario Kart. Like I'm more interested in something that is from the ground up, made with Labo in mind, and takes advantage of Labo's weirdness fully, rather than it being sort of a novelty tacked onto a game that I already enjoy. So honestly, I would get excited if tomorrow they said, "Hey," if they had a Nintendo Direct and they were like, "Hey, here's a new Labo kit." I would be like, "What? Really?
What
I'll
would be your dream
pre-order
next Labo kit?
something like a game that is like puzzle solving. Like you have to build some kind of cardboard contraption, and then the game is a series of puzzles that you have to solve using your contraption that you built.
Interesting.
Like environmental puzzles or something, like, right, like Zelda puzzles, if I'm being honest. But like I don't want a Zelda Labo game. I wouldn't say no to that. Maybe that could be paper Zelda, right? Like truly paper, as opposed to Paper Mario. But something that's like like makes you build something, and then in the game as you play, you sort of have the cardboard laid out in front of you and you have to manipulate it in strange ways to solve puzzles. I think that would be really cool. Like, because I've done driving and flying, using cardboard tools, and I've done creative things using cardboard tools, like playing piano music and stuff. But I would love to have like just a series of boxes in front of me that I have to arrange in certain ways to solve puzzles in a game that has like an interesting story. That would be my weird pie in the sky hope for the future of Labo.
Portal 3 coming exclusively to Nintendo Labo.
Yeah, like you got to put this cardboard key in this box, and then you got to roll it over twice like a dice or something. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not a game designer, and I'm certainly not a Nintendo game designer. But
certainly not. They wouldn't have you.
No.
But Kyle, thank you so much for taking the time to reminisce on the phenomenon, the worldwide sensation that was Nintendo Labo. Anything else we need to say before we wrap up here?
No, Labo. It's a weird good time that I hope is not dead, but I suspect is probably dead.
Rest in peace. Kyle, thank you so much, and thank you so much to everyone for listening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, throw All Things Nintendo a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to get any questions or comments in, you can get in touch with me at allthingsnintendo@GameInformer.com, or you can hit me up on Instagram at Brian P. Shea. You can also join the Game Informer Community Discord, which is a perk for subscribing to our Twitch channel, even just for 1 month. Kyle, plug something, would ya?
Game Informer's TikTok account. Go do that one.
That's our show for this week. Thank you again for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time.